Mr. Brian Zimmerman. How you doing, Brian?
Hey, I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me on, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Excellent, excellent. Happy to have you. I know that today you're going to bring some really good value. I know part of your experiences, but I'm sure I'm going to learn some things in this conversation, and the audience, I'm sure, will too. So I'm going to give you guys a little feedback on Brian. What I know, first and foremost, when I met him, he's a Marine. He was a Marine, and we'll talk about
Excited.
that for a minute. And his biggest job to date is obviously he's a dad of three awesome girls. And other than that, we had the opportunity of working together out across the country here and learned a lot of great things. And that's why I think today you're going to be able to bring some good value because of your experiences, not just as a Marine and his dad, but Brian's an entrepreneur. So I think I want to go shoot down the lane today, Brian, of the mindset of an entrepreneur with money, because it's a total different mindset that of the W-2 earner. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's a different ball game.
What do you think the biggest difference? Because there's going to be listeners out there that are, I think a lot of these listeners are millennials, probably maybe 20 to 40, right? And if they're thinking about being an entrepreneur, what kind of mindset do you think they need to have going into being an entrepreneur with money?
Well, I think it's always, for me, my lessons over the last 15 years of entrepreneurship, and just to kind of go just a background. See, I started my entrepreneurial endeavors actually not only at a young age, but really when I was still in the Marine Corps. I had that bug, if you will. In fact, the very first business that I started was part time when I just got back from Iraq. I had a shoulder injury, shoulder surgery, that I had a little bit of an issue out in Iraq, came back, had that surgery, and I found myself literally not being able to do anything for 6 months. And there was a time when I was in Korea and I was stationed, I was on post one night. And believe it or not, I came across this book on post on guard duty at night. I kid you not. I think I still have it too. But it was investing or something, investing for dummies or invest. It's one of those dummy series books, right?
Yes, yes.
And I read it, and I remember reading a section, and I don't know, I'm 19 years old at this time, and I'm reading this section about mutual funds, and it talked about the compounding interest of mutual funds, and if you invest this in this many years, right? And I'm thinking, this is interesting. And so that kind of got my mind wrapping. And so from that day forward, I started looking at ways to make more money than I was earning on the day job. Day job at the time was the Marine Corps, obviously. So I got involved in some different things. But the very first business, I actually purchased a course off of an infomercial about 2 o'clock in the morning one night. It was a how to flip real estate notes. And yeah, so that was my first journey. I ended up buying that program and then investing in some mentorship after that. Did not flip any notes, but learned a lot. And that kind of started the whole process.
That's real interesting because so you're 19 and you're doing that, recognizing. So, like you said, you had the bug of thinking, man, what am I going to do? Talk to me about, share with the audience that may be out there before joined the Marines and went out there and then had this, come across your plate, and that was probably the beginning of your entrepreneurship
Yeah.
lifestyle. What were the kind of money lessons that you had or didn't have, and where did they come from?
Well, a few things. So the first question that you asked was the money mindset, or the entrepreneurial mindset. And where I was going with that is kind of my background. And then we'll get to that question too, because I'm a little bit all over the place,
Okay.
Kevin. But it comes down to discipline. I think that's been one of the biggest lessons, and the difference between, say, a 1099, or excuse me, a W-2 and an entrepreneur is that structure and that discipline. There's a completely different. When you're on your own, it can be lonely at times, especially when you're starting a business. You not only have to find structure in with what it is that you're doing. See, in the Marine Corps, or with a lot of jobs, especially the military, is my day was very structured. I was told where to be. I was told what to do. Heck, I was told pretty much what I could eat at certain, or when I could eat during the day, right? And so going into entrepreneurship, you're on your own. And so it can be a very lonely place. Not only that, but now you're also having to deal with the mindset and the aspect between not everybody is going to be a big fan of what it is that you're doing. Friends, family members, people around you aren't, they could be negative because of their conditioning and
Right.
their prior experiences. So there's a lot to deal with when the mindset comes, and we can dive more into that. What was your other question, Kevin?
So before you just made the decision to go join, the Marines, and let's say like right out of high school, I mean, what type of financial education did you get, and where did it come from, or did you have any?
Yeah, I mean, no, none.
No.
You see, I kind of grew up where, I mean, I had a paper. I had a paper route when I was 14 years old. We didn't have much money. I was raised by a single dad. My dad raised me and my two sisters. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. I shared a bedroom with my dad. I watched my dad struggle financially. I heard a lot of the talk around me was, we can't afford that. We can't, money doesn't grow on trees. That's for rich people. So that was the conditioning.
Mm.
And so conditioning plays a big role in how we think, how we act when it comes around to, our time and our money.
I couldn't agree with you more. In that story is probably so much more prevalent out there in America than people realize, whether it's a single dad or a single mom, right? And if you're out there and your parents, they're doing the best they can. They're trying to keep a roof over your head and make sure you can eat and all just the basic necessities in life. And I often say parents can't teach what parents don't know, and it's not necessarily, their fault 100%. And so you grew up not really learning anything about money except scarcity, right? Scarcity is what you learned. And for a lot of people, it's hard for them to crawl out of that. Again, you and I have experiences of talking with just hundreds and hundreds of people, in seeing that. So it's very relatable in your side. So when you made the decision, like, well, then the way out for you basically was like, I'm joining the Marines, and then the Marines structured you, right? And you're like, man, structure's cool. Man, I want some structure. But then you decided, I want my freedom too, because it was like too much structure. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Super cool. Awesome. So then when you got back out of the war, from the war, being a Marine, and did you just stay strictly being an entrepreneur? Did you try to do some sort of a W-2 job? I mean, and then because you learned about the mutual funds and things, and so did you start to develop kind of some goals and game plan with money?
Yeah. So, I struggled for years trying to get businesses to work. And it kind of goes back to your question a little bit ago when it comes to the mindset, because there's that conflict of past conditioning, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have the structure, the ability to ask and receive, right? Money. If you grew up in a lifestyle where you had a hard time asking, or you maybe got in trouble for asking, and now you get into entrepreneurship and you're having to ask for money from others. And so it comes down to that dialogue, right? So I struggled with that for many years. I'd start a business, couldn't make it, run myself in a lot of debt, and then have to go work for somebody. I'd make enough money to then go back into business on my own. And this cycle was continually repeating over and over again. And so I had to really figure out for myself, what do I need to do to fix this? Because it became a problem. It became a pattern.
But you know what? I think in that story, and I think the good takeaway from the guys out there, the people listening, would be, one, persistence. You didn't give up. You're like, you know what? That saying, failures are only failure if you actually quit, right? And you didn't quit. You're like, these are learning stepping stones for me. I'm learning along the way, and I know personally that you've learned a lot, and you continue to learn, as we all should. We should never stop learning when it has to become in our lives, whether it's money or relationships. So I think the big takeaway there is, Brian's just been persistent. Don't beat yourself up. I'm sure because again, I've had my share of failures also, and I beat myself up for like 10 minutes. That's it. But I know some people can wallow in that when you like have these failures that you put so much time and energy in, and you're like, crap, it didn't work. What do I do next? Screw it. I'm just going to get a job, right? Well, that's cool. So talk to me about your dad, and I know your girls are they're young, but they're not that young. To what are you doing because of the way you were brought up? What are you doing different with them? And are you teaching them at all? Share with the audience their ages, and if you are or are not yet, or the plan you have on teaching them any type of financial.
Yeah, so definitely I'm working on a couple things. I have a 13-year-old son. He'll be 14 here in 3 weeks.
Wow.
I have a 8-year-old daughter who will be 9 in like 4 weeks. So figure this all out,
Oh,
okay?
wow.
And I have a 6-year-old daughter that will be 7 in 4 weeks.
What?
So all of our kids' birthdays are within a week of each other.
Oh my gosh.
So, but so it's pretty wild. But yeah.
That's cool.
So there's a couple things I'm doing. So my son has been working part-time for about a year. He works in a little part-time business that him and I started. This little part-time business does about $3,200 gross a month. And so it takes about 5 hours a week of his time to do. So pretty profitable.
Right.
It's a little janitorial business.
Okay.
Picking up trash out of HOA communities.
Okay.
Right. And so I helped him start that. He's been helping me. I do help him as well. So he gets to focus and work on a couple things. And one, how to put trash cans. You believe it or not, right? Cutting corners is little things. Little things is putting trash bags properly inside of a trash
container.
Trash can.
Yep.
Container. So they don't fall out or run into issues where people start putting a lot of stuff and the back comes out. Now you're having to dig it out with hands. So little things like that he's had to overcome, or I catch him kind of cutting corners, right? So we're working on attention to detail with our work and what it is that we're doing. He does get paid. When he does get paid, what I teach him specifically is we have I kind of got this from the Dave Ramsey stuff, is you have the savings envelope, you have the we call it a couple things. I call it one, he has an envelope where he puts 50% of his money in there and he can use that money for whatever within reason.
Right.
He's getting a teenage boy. So we got to kind of check out. All right. So he uses that money for that. He has a giving container. So 10% of that will go to giving. And then the other 40% goes to wealth accumulation. And his goal is to take that envelope and then take that money to go make money with it.
So
that's how I have him set up.
So that's budgeting, right? Which is awesome, because I think most people get in trouble because they don't budget, right? They just grab a check, and then the first thing that comes to mind that they want to spend their money on. And you know, I've always taught my kids the difference between wants and needs, and you know, take care of your needs before you take care of your wants, I always say. So that's awesome at 14 that you're teaching them this lesson about budgeting, because that will really shape his mindset around money. Mm-hmm. That money, you make money for a purpose, right? And multiple purposes. And the fact that you did that, I think he won't really probably reap the rewards, the benefits of that until he's probably in his 20s sometime, and he'll look back like, man, I didn't even know that was the lesson my dad was teaching me. You know what I mean? It'll just be ingrained. So that's super cool. And unfortunately, we know that a lot of parents don't do that, but that's a great lesson. So I hope anybody out there with some young kids that, you know, what do I do? How do I teach them without, you know, getting too complicated? That's a first basic great lesson, is budgeting. So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. If you want to watch the whole podcast episode, then go ahead and click right here. Okay? Do me a favor. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you want to hit the notification bell, you'll get notified every time we release a new video out for you, whether it's the clip or the whole podcast. So hope you get a lot of value, and I'll see you guys on the next one.